Thanks everyone for joining us today. We will be spending the next 40 minutes talking about our recent publication out of LF Research and LF Education called the 2025 State of Technical Talent Market. We have these experts with us today to tell us more about what the LF Education is seeing in this space, what OpenSSF is working on, and how our research agenda and our research methodologies help us find these kinds of strategic trends and priorities. So I'm going to first introduce, I guess for those of you who are less familiar, my name's Anna Hermansen. I'm the ecosystem manager and a researcher at Linux Foundation Research. Our department was founded in 2021 with the intent of exploring open source at its intersection with different emerging technical priorities, different best practices in the space, where our open source projects are going and what they need to be sustainable and flourish. And so we've been working with different core priority topics to the LF community, and we also work with different LF community members and projects, such as LF Education and OpenSSF we've worked with as well, to produce research that are kind of burning questions to these communities that will help them build stronger, more resilient communities and serve their communities in the best way possible. So I think, yes, a little intro slide. I introduced myself. We have Clyde Seepersad, SVP of Linux Foundation Education. Here with us today, we have Krobe, Chief Security Architect at OpenSSF, Adrienn Lawson, my colleague at Linux Foundation Research, who is our Director of Quantitative Research. So I'll have Adrienn give us a bit of a background on this project and maybe keep it to a little bit of 5 minutes or so we can get to the panel. Okay, you got a mic. Thank you, Adrienn.
Sure. Is it working? Okay, great. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about the report and the methodology and why we do surveys and why we do it basically every year. So I think first the Tech Talent Survey was called Open Source Jobs Survey, right, Clyde? Several years ago, yes. And then LF Education and LF Research realized that because open source is really everywhere in the IT sector, it's really about the technical talent market. And so in 2024, I was involved with the State of Tech Talent Survey, as well as this year. And we are happy to announce the publication, which was, I think, published on our website yesterday. So why we're doing this yearly, one of them is the historical analysis dimension. It's good to see the year-over-year comparisons, where the trend is going, especially in this very important topic. Second is the regional comparisons that we can do. Actually, with the Tech Talent Survey, we are doing a specific Japan report as well, which was published last week at KubeCon Japan. So please also consult that for a region-specific perspective. And we also do the annual focus areas. So each year we are revising the survey, making sure that we are able to explore the different topics each year that are important and are in the focus. And of course, you'll see that in this year, AI has been an important topic as well as last year. And in terms of the methodology, so usually our surveys are sent out to the LF community, the open source community through newsletters, emails. I'm sure maybe you've came across them. And we also do some socials. And for the kind of markets that are more difficult to kind of penetrate this way, for example, with the Japan sample, we go at the third-party panel provider so that we can get the right amount. This survey specifically has 556 responses, which is great, and it was a great effort to make this happen. And we do have not only Japan, but from other Asia-Pacific regions, as well as from Europe, we do have data and was able to do regional segmentations, and also across industry verticals.
Thanks. I'm just going to go back to this slide in case you don't remember our names. So Thanks, Adrienn, for that introduction. I'd like to start off with, I know Clyde and Adrienn, you're quite close to the project. Krob, you'll have some insights from a security perspective, but if you could give an overview of kind of what you think the key takeaway from this report is.
Okay, I'll start. And I know that we're going to be talking about AI a lot, so I just want to start with, I think, one of the findings, which was very nice to see, is that 84% of the organizations said that open source culture within their organization is an effective strategy to keep technical talent within their organizations. And I think that really just shows that, like high-performing technical talent is, of course, looking for the salary, the work flexibility, all of that, but also they're looking for the open source culture that they can collaborate with others. And I think it's always, good to look at that human resource perspective as well.
Thanks, Adrienn. There's more happening than just AI. We talk a lot about AI and the potential impacts. I would say, as way of framing, it's called the Tech Talent Report. We're not purporting to represent employment generally across everybody in every sector. We have a very specific lens on what's happening with technical professionals. And so I think as we get into the AI piece of the story, I want to make sure we're clear that we're not talking about some of the impacts that are likely to happen in the workforce in general. I think we're already seeing that. I was talking to a colleague recently who runs a contact center in the Philippines, and they've made significant reductions in their tier ones because so much of the tier one type calls are perfectly well suited to even the models as they exist today and the agentic stuff that exists today. But it's more. There is more going on than just AI. There is a continuing need for more talent on the underlying infrastructure, that the cloud native infrastructure that's powering pretty much everything we do. And there's a massive need for security and thinking about security in a systemic way as a way that overlays on top of. So yes, first we got entranced by the LLMs, and then we got sucked into the agentics, and now it's the agents to run the agents. And there's always cool, sexy stuff. I would say maybe cybersecurity is not often on the list of sexy stuff. What? I would say learning the fundamentals of the Linux command line that's sitting underneath every piece of computing that you're doing is not sexy. And learning about Git and CI/CD is not particularly sexy. And learning about container orchestration is not particularly sexy. But, I remember being in high school and the whole debate about could you have calculators because does anybody need to know math, right? You have to be literate. You have to all be literate. And what companies are saying, more than 50% of companies are saying, not enough talent on cyber, not enough talent on cloud, not enough talent on continuous deployment, right? So there's a broader story here about a bright future for technical talent needs in the industry writ large that I think has been kind of pushed aside a little bit by the panic, I would say, around kind of what AI is doing. So I want to make sure we keep that lens available. That we're going to continue to need more technical talent, even as we get into more automation with some of the models.
Do you have a rebuttal?
Security is sexy.
Thanks, Clyde. Yeah, I think that's an important piece. I mean, we saw that we have a significant skills gap and talent gap in AI and ML, but we also saw an equally high percentage of survey respondents that are in need of cybersecurity and cloud skills. So I think that's a key thing to keep in mind. And as you say, we are looking at the technical talent market and how that is actually, as our report found, the demand for technical talent is expanding. I think maybe Adrienn, we could turn to you, and given what Clyde just mentioned, could you share some of that kind of findings that we found on understaffing and how we are looking at upskilling in that to address that?
Yes, sure. So we did have, looking at my notes, cheating. But so we did have a question on, is your organization understaffed in these kind of strategic domains? And I'm just gonna kind of read it out here that there was 68% of organizations saying that they are understaffed in AI ML, yes. But there was 65% who said they're understaffed in cybersecurity and compliance. And I'm sure Krob can talk all about the kind of skills gap and all of the legal and regulatory gaps that we're seeing with the CRA. There was 61% saying that they're understaffed in FinOps and cost optimization. And 59% saying they're understaffed in cloud computing, 56% in platform engineering. So we are seeing that there are these strategic domains, some of them directly, indirectly related to AI and ML that are there, and these skills are needed. And like overall, there's definitely a talent gap. I'm not sure where the recruiters are on where you can kind of do the. There's such a gap, and you're not able to really match the employer with the candidates. But there's also another aspect of it, which is should you hire? There's another dimension where you can upskill and reskill the workforce, and we're seeing that increasingly more and more organizations are looking at this strategy and are thinking that. Yes, it's effective, especially as in our survey we've seen that to hire on average it takes about 8 months, and for upskilling it was 5.
Thanks. Krob, turning to you. How do you, from your perspective with OpenSSF and the work you've done, how do we address this dearth of cybersecurity skills in the talent, in the workforce?
So I haven't always been an amazing thought influencer on the internet. Back in days of yore, I've been an actual cyber practitioner for about 30 years. And this has been, in my vocation, it's been a very particularly painful point because generally, we've done a good job of training cyber people to do cyber things. But historically, within an organization, your security team has been the Department of No that lives in the basement behind a locked door, and they'll swoop in, seagull in, crap all over the project, and then fly away. Is the old school kind of CISO model. And we've identified very early on, I've been working on this particular kind of upskilling and reskilling problem for about 20 years. And we've recognized that a lot of our academic institutions aren't teaching the right things. They're kind of fixated more. I heard the best word yesterday in an interview, that people are fixated on heritage systems. I'm like, that is the nicest way to describe old cruft that I've heard in my life. But the programs have been designed to kind of focus on these legacy things. And all your security dollars have been focused on training cyber people to manage the firewall or write policies or whatever. And it's only recently that we finally starting to get adoption within businesses, is people understand that security is a partner of the business, and they're there to help the business go fast, but do it safely, and not end up in orange jumpsuits, in handcuffs and whatnot. So what I've been super excited about is we've had a partnership with Clyde and LF Education, where we've thought about how do we inculcate cyber skills into other people that don't have security or cyber in their title. And we'll talk about this in a little bit about the framework, but that's a methodology is we need to start reaching out and teaching people, because every job, whether you're a developer, you're a security person, you're a project manager, you're an AI data scientist, security, everyone has some role to play and some ownership of that, and to help you protect your organization, protect your community and your customers.
Yeah, I connected here yesterday with someone who's just about to graduate from high school, and he said to me, should I even bother going? The intention was kind of, is there a point to going through academia at this point when we don't even really know what we need? We don't know what we don't know in AI, and the education market is in flux, with at least in AI and in cybersecurity as well. What would you say to either someone like that or an academic institution that is trying to stay relevant in this very tumultuous space? I think question for any of you.
So fun fact, the LF, we are actually actively trying to upskill academic institutions. We have a partnership with LF Education and our friends over at the CNCF, where we have an academic accreditation program where we're reaching out to colleges and universities, and we have a huge amount of content around Kubernetes and SRE kind of cloudy things, and they actually have a certification, and we're working, and we have a bunch of cyber stuff too. So we're working with academic institutions to say, here's what we think a modern curriculum should be to give learners these experiences and skills and knowledge, and we will, accredit them, give them a badge to saying you're teaching industry quality content, and ideally that's going to help influence other institutions to try to adopt these practices, teach people about how to do Git. I know it's not sexy, but these are core skills you have to have no matter what your job is. And the same thing around cybersecurity. You need to understand, do you have the importance of protecting data? And it's just a foundational thing for us. So we have a program around academic accreditation, both for the CNCF curriculum as well as the OpenSSF curriculum around cybersecurity. So we're trying to up-level colleges and universities around the world.
Any thoughts, Clyde? Adrienn?
I can add some evidence here. We did have a question on what are the kind of factors that those hiring and recruiters are looking for in candidates. And actually, the relevant hands-on experience came first. And of course, if you're just graduating high school and college, you might be like, yeah, fine. Second was a kind of portfolio and kind of either a website or just to make sure that you have this portfolio of previous accomplishments. And this is where I think open source can really come in, and you can show kind of the things that you've participated in and to show those practical. And I think in LF Education there's also courses which are really going into the practical stuff, and you're able to work on example projects. The third was certifications, and the fourth was formal college and university degrees. So I'm not saying that college degrees and university degrees will, become like fully obsolete. It's just that I think those who are graduating really have to realize that this hands-on experience that they might not have yet can be kind of come through their portfolios and what they can show and the different projects that they are working on. And open source is, I think, able to really help with that.
I think we would need another panel to talk about university education and the interactions. I'm going to not get myself in trouble. I'm going to park that to the side. I think what's really different for that person you spoke to this year versus 2 years ago or 3 years ago, there was a bit of an easy button path with the Learn to Code bootcamp market that in general young people were aware of as a sort of potential way to get in if you weren't maybe going to go the university path. And I won't wade into what all the different types of boot camps and the value and the cost, but there was, at least in the popular imagination, an understanding that there was this non-degree pathway. They're almost all out of business now. It's fundamentally shaken the confidence of young people that this idea that you could learn to code, and if you had a GitHub repo, your repo was in your resume, and that was sort of the path. And now anybody goes into any model and asks it to code XYZ in Python, and you can't read it. It just spews onto the screen, right? And that is fundamentally distressing if you're a young person trying to think about, well, what do I do next? And so back to kind of what we talked about a little bit earlier, it's a little bit of a eat your veggies story, right? Do you know the basic security practices? Do you know some of the basic fundamentals of the operating system that sits way down the stack, and the containers and the Gits? That's what's next. If you're not going to go down the path of formal education, understanding the infrastructure that runs the stuff, practicing it. I think we're all big proponents of nobody cares if you can pick the answer out of a lineup. People want to know that you've done something. It doesn't have to be with a Fortune 500 company. It could be for your community center. It could be for your church. It could be, but do something. Get in there, write a script, mess about with agents, and then leverage some of the stuff that, the training and certification programs from, places that are known and are maybe product specific. I think the challenge for all of us is, how do we get that next generation? I think that confidence is shaken, right? We have got to get them a way to get confident that there is a future of tech careers that looks vastly different than the thing we've gotten comfortable with over the past 20, 25 years.
Yeah, the individual I was speaking to yesterday, one of his advisors told him that there would be no more computer science. I didn't quite know how to respond to that, but I think it's a great point. I used to work for a web development bootcamp 5 or so years ago, and the majority of the time was learning how to code, and that would be fundamentally altered now that we have these tools. So I'm wondering if we could dive a bit more into, once someone has the job at an entry level or beyond, how is AI, I think I'd like to hear how AI is shaping technical work or technical tasks, and then also I'd love to hear a bit more about how you've seen the CRA shaping the technical talent workforce. So maybe we could start with AI.
So, yeah, I think 97% of the respondents said they anticipated having significant value into their organization from AI. 96. We all believe, right? So I think the starting point is we all believe there's some goodness there. You know, one of the things I don't think made it into the report, but it's been interesting as somebody who's been in education for years. Post-World War II, we had about a 60-year run where worker productivity improvement year over year grew 2 to 2.5% over that whole period. From 2000 to now, it's 1.4 or 1.5. So shockingly, the internet made us less productive.
Cat memes.
AI really does have the potential to significantly improve productivity and output, and you have other things demographically with shrinking populations, right? So there's a whole bunch of complex things kind of circling there. What most 96% saying they see value, 67% saying they don't have enough staff. One thing that struck me when I started at the LF, I was an open source newbie, and I went around and just talked to a bunch of people and was asking about, well, how do you train your workforce on open source? And people sort of looked at you funny, like, no, you don't train on open source, you just pull down the repo and have at it, and then maybe beg for help in an IRC channel if you get stuck. And I thought, well, that's crazy. Like, that's not how anybody learns anything. And so first there was a wave of people appreciating that all tech is tech, and you do have to help people learn stuff. And so sometimes that means taking formal education programs. But the other thing that struck me was how consistently worried technical employers were to train their workforce. There was just this universal belief that people would leave as soon as you were done training them, which I guess was normalized sort of in the tech sector, but was really like in sharp contrast to anything I'd ever seen like outside, right? It's like, well, you think it's a bad thing to have more skills? Like, that's weird. AI, I think, has sort of unlocked like a different part of people's brain because they know there's value, they know they don't have enough talent, but they're also acutely aware that if you're going to automate, you better do it by the people who understand your business. There's a great example somebody was sharing with me. This fast food company automated the order taking, when you drive up. And it's great, the voice recognition, the matching to the menu, except if somebody, you make your order and the thing, they repeat it back and you say, yep, that's my order. All great. But if you then said, oh, I want fries with that, the thing just broke because it didn't have it instantly sent your order, right? You ordered, I told you, I played back your order, you said yes. That order's gone, and now you want fries. Like, the workflow just didn't conceive of the fact that you could amend an order, which sounds like so insanely trivial. Like, anybody who's spent 15 seconds in an order line would know that that's a thing. And somehow this whole model got built without it, right? And so the awareness of the importance of understanding people, understanding processes, I think is unlocking in people this idea that, well, maybe I should train the people I have on how to do this stuff so that we don't end up being unable to add fries to an order when somebody's in the line. And I do think that is a sea change, right? Of like this idea that upskilling your workforce is not a risk, but it's a necessity.
CRA?
Man, I can't be in a talk without mentioning AI or CRA. This is, I need to make this a drinking game. Corporations and businesses have recognized the need to have skilled talent, and this has been increasingly recognized by global governments. Reflecting back, the first time I really saw that governments kind of woke up and realized training and skilling was important was around 2000. There was an executive order, 14028, that from the Biden White House, and they were talking about a cybersecurity strategy. And part of that cybersecurity strategy was dedicated towards talking about implementing training and developing the next generation workforce. That, I think, kicked off a lot of other international governments to thinking about this problem. And come 2024, my favorite buddy, the European Union's Cyber Resilience Act, they go through and they've implemented a lot of strong requirements around secure software development, secure by design, and vulnerability management. And these are all kind of classically things that commercial enterprise, you're going to have a vuln management team, but when you're thinking upstream, these are not necessarily strong priorities for a single maintainer project hacking on the keyboard in midnight. So the CRA is actually, the requirements are very strict, potentially depending on what the scenario is. You could have, if your product has a vulnerability and causes a European citizen to be harmed, having their identity taken or their personal information leveraged, the company could potentially have to be fined up to 2.5% of their last year's global revenue for each incident. And so the need to have your workforce understanding cybersecurity and also understanding these kind of AppSec foundational principles, which bleeds into your program and project management, bleeds into your database, bleeds into your AI folks. Everybody has to be kind of pulling the same direction and contributing. Otherwise, there's some pretty amazing consequences if a company's trying to sell something within the EU. And that's where I'll mention it again, where we partnered with my friends in the education team, where we've taken a look at, we've created a global cybersecurity skills matrix, where we've identified 14 job families, and some of them have security in the title, most of them don't. We talk about managers and project leads and that type of stuff. And we talk about core security skills that every person on staff needs to have. So from a newcomer or somebody looking to upskill or change jobs, this potentially is a blueprint. I'd like to be an AI data scientist. Well, we've provided you a kind of a blueprint from a cyber perspective. You need to have these skills and experiences and understand these types of technologies. And then flip that for a HR team, if they're looking to do hiring, or if you're a recruiting manager, it gives you a really nice list of skills and experiences that you would seek out in job candidates, which eventually we're going to marry up with certifications and training and content to help people get these experiences, or at least kind of look for as they're going through the hiring process.
Adrienn, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this theme of reshaping the workforce, and as fellow researchers, why this research helps talent and hiring managers kind of get to that point of having the right skills for the job.
Yeah, so I'm just going to circle back to AI a little bit. So we are seeing that, different organizations are scaling some positions down and some up. So there's definitely dynamically shaping the whole technical or segments of the technical workforce. And we're also seeing that I think a third of the organizations are now they're reporting that their developers are spending significant time reviewing AI-generated code. So there is definitely change happening there as well. And we are also seeing that some of these organizations reported that their entry-level tasks are now being automated by AI. And I think my interpretation of this is that that's why I think organizations have to, think long-term. I mean, if you decide to, replace all of your entry-level positions with AI, then how are you going to make sure that your workforce is sustainable? How are we going to make sure that, IT is not graying out and there's still people doing the work, which will be needed, as Clyde and Krob very nicely explained to us. And so organizations need to invest in their people. I know that, the different economic situations are making this priority not as important to organizations, but I think long term, this is the only way.
Thanks. Do we have any questions from the audience? I'll pass you my. It's kind of sweaty, sorry.
Hi there. I'm really, really interested in your perspective on that question of sustainability. I really feel like a lot of the trends that we're currently seeing in the marketplace are sort of cutting our own legs out from underneath us in terms of the tech industry, and that seems real bad. So what can organizations do to sort of counter those trends while still taking advantage of the new opportunities that these technologies present?
I think it's a great question. It's something we all have to grapple with. I'll go back for a second to the example I was talking about earlier of my longtime friend who reduced their contact center tier 1 staffing. They got 12 people out of that cohort and put them into their technical function and started the process of training them up, which I thought was a great example of organizations understanding there's a lot of value in people who know your organization and who you've built trust with. I think one thing we're going to be grappling with, there's obviously lots of conversations and talks at this event about trust and the nature of trust. And so thinking about where people have potential, that might be different than the role. Because it's true, there are going to be, just like in past cases, right? When I was a kid, to make a long distance call, you had to have an operator physically connect a circuit. And that went away. In whole parts of the developing world, they skipped landlines entirely and went to cell phones, right? And so it's true as technology progresses that you have whole sectors of current employment that go away, but thinking about how to reintegrate people that might not be needed in the old roles into the new roles. One of the things that really struck me in the data, and this has been true for several years now, I think ever since we started asking the question, it is faster, cheaper, and more reliable to upskill somebody in your organization than it is to try to hire from the outside. What's the stat? Is it a third of people leave within the first year? 1 in 5 people. After you spend, I think, 8-point-something months hiring and onboarding them, 20% of them are gone in the first 5 years, and there's a decay cycle after that. And yet there was always this consistent belief that you had to hire talent in. Well, hiring talent in is a circular firing squad, right? Because you poach them off LinkedIn, so then somebody else poaches, and then somebody poaches one from you. And so you're all actually back in the same place because you're not growing any talent. You're just trying to get this easy button. And even in that mode, it takes 8 months versus maybe 5 or 6 months. And so I think this mindset of talent is something you have to grow, not just buy, is a sea change that we're kind of all going to have to go through together as an industry, and thinking about ways to bring new talent in that maybe were in non-technical roles and how to put them on a journey of growing up in those skills with supervision, because what they have is the context, right? Context matters a lot. You guys have heard Jim say this probably in every keynote, right? Context is not content, is not context. Context is going to matter even more in an AI-driven world. The people who have the context are the people who are in organizations right now. Our challenge is to figure out the pathways to get folks from the jobs of yesterday into the jobs of tomorrow, keep them engaged in the organization, and make those investments. And it's a continuous investment process, right? There was a time where you could say, I want to be a DB engineer, and then you just learn it, and you do it for 30 years, and you retire, and that just is not a thing anymore. 2 years ago, if you'd said that the action wasn't in LLMs, people would have thought you were crazy. But it's not, right? Now it's in agents and managing agents, managing. the stuff's moving just too fast, right? So it's a continuous commitment to the people in our org to figure out how do we help them navigate to the thing that's most important right now. How do we facilitate it? When we cannot pull them out to send them to do a 2-year degree to come back. We have to do it in line, in real time. We have to carve out expectations for managers to provide coaching and oversight and not just performance feedback and reviews. And there's a whole change in how we think about the people at our organization that we're going to have to get our arms around, because we're going to need the people. We're going to need the people that we trust. We're going to need the people who have context to take advantage of all the productivity stuff that we kind of see hovering out there. We're all reaching for that AI egg, right? But we're going to only get there through people. There's a great, the Boston Consulting Group had a great report, and they call it the 70-20-10 rule. It's 10% is about the tech, which is where we want to spend all our time talking about it. 20% is about the processes, and 70% is about the people. I think it would behoove us to think about the people as a central part of the strategy. I'll just climb down from my soapbox now and
Thank you,
pass
Clyde.
on the mic.
It's awesome. Oh, yeah.
Thank you so much for all the sharing. As a current student and also a AI developer, this is super relevant. I actually witnessed like firsthand of the many co-camps not doing too good. And I actually onboarded myself. I got a business minor. And I also see this trend of business. So I'm from Ohio State University. IO. Our business program, our official Fisher College of Business, is having, I think, more CSE requirements for its business students. And basing off of what you said, I wonder if now is the time to also push business into our engineering, given that there's a gap, like you mentioned. It's way cost efficient to upskill a business person to have AI development skills, rather than having to painstakingly, educate a new hire on how the business operate. And so my question is, where do you see, with consideration of sustainable, talent pipeline, where do you see entry-level job hiring just going in general? Thank you.
Yeah, it's probably true globally. I think it's been very true in the US that we went for 30 years with very, very few people going into what we call the trades pipeline, so electricians and plumbers. I had a plumber out a few weeks ago. It was $125 an hour plus whatever the fee was to show up on the site. The guy was 60-something years old. And he was like, I'll never retire. I'm making so much money. If you don't think about multi-generational workforce talent needs, you're going to end up, it's great to be a 62-year-old plumber. It's not great to be a homeowner needing plumbing services, right? The market has broken down horribly. I think most big organizations are mindful at some level about, what the cycle of staffing is going to be over 5-10 years and where it's going to come from. It's just that right now there's a lot of uncertainty, right? We had a playbook. Everybody knew the playbook. Hire a bunch of devs. It's always hardest when the playbook gets deprecated. That playbook got deprecated in a hurry, and it got deprecated before we built the next playbook, and so we're all sitting here saying, what are you doing? The other point I think you made is important, right? And this is back to the fries thing. Technologists have to do more to understand the context of the business. Business people have to do more to understand the context of the technology. In a foot race between a business person trying to build an AI app to achieve outcomes and a technologist trying to build an AI app to achieve business outcomes, I know who I would bet on. So, I think organizations just need to think about how are people going to come into the org and understand the business? how are they training them on their particular ecosystem? I think one of the things that struck me, somebody was talking recently about how the internet wave didn't really get unlocked until the LAMP stack became a reference architecture, because there was 16 billion ways to do things, and it feels right now like there's 60. People always come to me and say, well, what's your AI training? I'm like, what on earth are you talking about? Every day, some new thing. By the time I learn something, it's deprecated, right? And so there's no reference stack, right? Like, we talk about AI as if it's a thing. It is a bullet train to the future that we are struggling, because there's no, every organization is doing it differently, from the data layer to the training layer to the implementation layer. You have to build your own solution. You have to get on your own train. You're going to have people that understand the business. So maybe all the hiring isn't young devs coming in. Maybe it's people, I don't know, like, I have a nephew who went into enterprise rent-a-car in the US. It has this amazing internship program that they do to bring people in and sort of get them to learn the business before they put them into a specialization. Something like that might be the new playbook, right? Is don't hire for specialization, hire for a path to understand the business, and then sort of cross-train them into this particular skills. I don't think any of us has the playbook, is the scary thing. I think we're writing it together.
I think we're at time. Sorry. If you had any other thoughts
I'll
on
talk
that.
for hours if you let me, so you should really.
I just wanted to, if anyone wants to download our report, we have a QR code. And then if you can get your hands on a physical one, they're going like hotcakes, I think. But we have a learning lounge where you might be able to find one. Thanks so much for coming to our session. It was great to chat with you all and hear more from our experts.